guys? Today I'll be doing a 1940s decade review. Now this is the decade where World War II peaks, the Cold War and all that good stuff, I guess. Well, technically bad stuff, but I mean good stuff for like analyzing history and stuff. So like, it's a very interesting decade to study, I guess. I've been recently reading The Book Thief, which takes place around that time. And somewhat a little before that, World War I as well, which is pretty cool. Anyways, here we go. So yeah, anything to mention, this is where the peak of car design starts, I guess. Yeah, 1940s cars are pretty great, I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, I'm gonna analyze it in order like I did with my other ones. 1940, Chaplin, the Great Dictator comes out. Really funny ass movie that probably, unfortunately, wouldn't be made today. But it's fucking funny because it's basically Chaplin making fun of Hitler. Hilarious. Funny as shit. But yeah, that was a great movie. That was also another great movie. 1940. I don't know. Oh yeah, Three Stooges came out with the Nazi Spy movie. That was pretty funny. I think Mo was trying to pose as Hitler, and I think Larry and Curly were like the henchmen, I guess. That was a classic episode. Love that episode. Yeah. 1940 as well. So FDR won in 1932, 1936. In 1940, he wins the 1940 election. FDR gets reelected again. I think he's the only president in history to ever do it. I'm not sure. I'll look it up real quick. FDR. Yes, FDR is the only president to serve more than 2 terms. So yeah, he breaks history in 1940 by winning his 3rd term. That happens. And yeah, that's mostly the events of 1940. World War II is, the first full year of World War II is 1940, as it started in late 1939. Great Depression basically is over by then. Or starting to be over, which is, I guess, good. Yeah, that's 1940. 1941, I think, the Japanese bomb Pearl Harbor. That happens. And then later on, Congress declares a war. And, the president agrees, and America finally gets involved in the war in 1941. That happens. What else happens? I'm trying to think. In 1941, besides that, well, I guess like they're still doing concentration camps, but they started that around the late 30s, I think. 1938, 39 is when Hitler started ordering concentration camps for the Jewish people, because yeah, Hitler didn't like Jewish people. But yeah, concentration camps were pretty deadly, I'm not gonna lie. They did bad stuff like gassing, cremating, abuse, and you know, a lot of people were starving there because they weren't fed well. It was terrible conditions. I've read Night by Elie Wiesel. That explains that. It's a true story, by the way. Highly recommend it if you want to read more about World War II. Yeah. But yeah. 1942. I'm trying to think. Let me check. I think that was when the Battle of Stalingrad was. You see? Or was that 43? Yeah. And summer of 1942, the Battle of Stalingrad starts, which is the deadliest battle in history. It was between Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union. It lasted about, I'd say like about 5 to 6 months. It was a pretty brutal battle for that period of time. And yeah, it was terrible. What else happened in 1942? I think it was either 41 or 42 where the Japanese joined the Axis power with Germany and Italy, all that stuff, all those countries. So yeah, it was mainly fought between the Axis and the Allies, I think, is what they used to call them. Yeah. But yeah, that mainly happened in 1942. What else? I'm trying to do more research. Operation Barbarossa? Oh yeah, that was 1941. Yeah, 1941 I forgot to mention Operation Barbarossa. That happens. When the Nazis ordered more concentration camps because of Hitler's Aryan race theory or something. It was a weird theory, but yeah, that happens. 1943, the Battle of Stalingrad ends. That happens. What else happens in 1943? I'm trying to think. 1943. Oh shoot, not 29. 43. That's like way in the future. Let me see. Events. The Warsaw Uprising, I think, and German army surrender in North Africa to British and Americans. That happens in 1943. 1944, D-Day happens, which was an invasion in Poland, which was one of Hitler's biggest mistakes, I guess. Although it didn't seem like it at the time. The other one was breaking the pact. And I think that happened in 1942 when Hitler sent the Nazis to Soviet Union, Russia at the time. And yeah, that broke the pact and Russia moved to the US's side. Yeah, that happened. There's a theory that if Hitler allied with Russia, they could have won the war. I don't know. Maybe. But yeah, 1944 was the D-Day, which was pretty bad, I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, pretty terrible. It was probably also one of the most deadliest battles in World War II history. 1945 is a more eventful year, I'd say. So what happens in 1945 is Hitler surrenders. There's a theory that he shot himself, but most likely him and his wife drank poison because they didn't want the army to kill him or execute him. So yeah, that happens. The Jewish get liberated from the concentration camps by the Allies, I think. Japan surrenders around this time. That happens. And what else? Unfortunately, Franklin Roosevelt dies around this time, which sucks. What else? I'm trying to think what happens in 1945. Fat Man and Little Boy get dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And the results are pretty devastating, I'm not gonna lie. I think Harry Truman was the guy who implemented that or something. Then again, he had to ask Congress, and I think Congress approved on it. Because Congress has to approve it before it becomes mandatory. usually. But yeah, that happens. Kills a lot of people, including civilians. Yeah. World War II ends in 1945. So, this is the last year before the baby boom. So, yeah. 1946 is a transitional year. It's the first year of the baby boom, which is post-World War II. First year of the Cold War. But it wouldn't really start to get active till the mid to late 50s. It was just starting, really. What else happened in 1946? Trying to think. Like I said, the Cold War starts and all that stuff. The Manhattan Project happens in 1946, I think. Where this was like the closest thing to where time travel could have been invented. Because they were working on like some futuristic thing. And, you know, I don't think it could have been invented, but this was like the closest time it could have been invented. Although it would be cool if it was, I'll be honest. What else? 1946. I guess like, yeah, the first full year we were out of this World War II bullshit, which is good. Yeah. 1947. Not much really happens. I guess it's the first full year of the Cold War. That's pretty much it, I guess. What else? I'm trying to think. Happened 1947. I want to see. I'm actually interested. I'm really interested. See what happened. Harry S. Truman signs the Truman Doctrine. Let me research it. It basically increases military support, basically. Funds the military better. So yeah, they were starting to try to fund the military better around this time, which is good. Which is what the country needed. Kind of still needs. Yeah, that happens. And also economic assistance is also part of that. Yeah. 1948, trying to think. This is like the time where people start to have more TVs in their household, I guess. I guess that's what is started, I guess. Like the start of the rise of TV and stuff. Well, technically, it could go back as early as the 30s, but not a lot of people had it in the 30s. But in the 40s, late 40s especially, starts to become slightly more noticeable and stuff. 1949, I guess, what happened in 1949? Let me see. It's kind of a blur. Let me see. Oh, NATO got formed in 1949. That's pretty big, actually. Yeah. NATO's still a thing today, by the way. I think Russia left NATO, which is, I think, crazy sign of things. But I think that happens later on. Yeah. 1949. Also, let's see. Discovery of oil in Caspian Sea, I heard on here. Yeah, stuff like that. I forgot to tell you, in 1947, Curly gets replaced by Shemp again. Shemp returns. He still does a great job. You know? Filling in for Curly because he had declining health. Which started around 1943. You know? What else? 1940s. Economy-wise, it's starting to improve from the 30s, but it's still not quite there yet. It's still pretty bad. World War II was going on for a good chunk of this decade. So yeah, a lot of loss. I think this war had like the biggest reparation costs and war loss in history in terms of people. Yeah. What else happened in the 1940s? I guess the rise of singer like Bing Crosby, Dean Martin, all those people. But they really started becoming popular around the early 50s, if we're being honest here. What else? This is the decade before they started going into the whole space thing, the space race and all that stuff. So yeah, they're still doing a lot of westerns and stuff around this time. Oh yeah, I forgot about 1942. Casablanca comes out, which was a big hit back then, I heard. Yeah. I think I ironically went to Casablanca in real life. But yeah, that comes out. It's an okay movie. What else? I'm trying to think. 1940s. What else happened? I guess the government, well, slightly getting better from the 1930s. Although it's not quite there yet until the 50s, like I said. Living conditions are moderate, I guess. Although they get pretty bad during the war. Especially like 1940 to 1944. Yeah. That was like the worst 5 years in history, to be honest. In my opinion. What else? I'm trying to think. Happens in the 40s. Besides, that stuff. And also FDR becoming the first president, only president to serve more than 2 terms. Well, music is still kind of jazzy in a way. Still has that 2030s jazzy kind of thing. Yeah. Cars start to get better. Cars in the 1900s to 1930s looked way too fucking wacky. But 40s is when they start to improve on it. It's when the golden age of cars starts. Also, they used to put metal in cars, by the way. Fun fact. Yeah. That's why they looked better back then. What else happened? Fashion. Women start wearing fur coats a lot in this decade, rather than the dresses that they casually wore in like the early 1900s. Men, I mean, they still wear suits, ties, I guess. Still same thing with that. Fashion's still good. Yeah. What else? I'm trying to think. Yeah. Overall, I'd say this decade was like pretty bad. Kind of sucked. No, not kind of. Full on was really bad. Full on sucked. It was terrible. So, out of 10, I'm going to be giving the 1940s a, let's see, you know what? Okay. I know the first half of the decade was bad, but the second half wasn't really as bad. So I'm going to cut it some slack. I'm not going to give it a 0. I'll be more generous. I'm going to give it a 1.3 out of 10. Or 1 out of 10. Yeah. No, actually, you know what? I take that back. Living conditions were hell. I'll give it like, I'll give it a 1 out of 10. Terrible decade. The worst decade of the 20th century by far, in my opinion. It just sucks. It's a shitty decade, full of war and chaos, and all that shit. It does get slightly better later on, but still, World War II was a piece of shit. Fuck that shit. But yeah, that's my review on the 1940s decade. Pretty shitty decade, but luckily it gets better later on. Anyways, peace.